All right. Okay. How about Facebook? Are we up?
We're up and the webinar is now live.
All right. Thank you. Good evening, everyone, and welcome. Welcome to the Michigan Department of Civil Rights. Welcome to the first in a series sponsored by the Michigan Department of Civil Rights, a collective understanding of who we are and what we do. Today, we will have first, one of the things we will do is we will have a welcome. We will bring welcome remarks from our interim executive director, Mary Engelman. We will then introduce our facilitator, Charles Schroeder, who will be taking us through this program today. Next, Charles will then introduce our divisions. It will be a brief overview of their divisions. It's just a snapshot of what we do and how we do it. Each division will subsequently have their own featured presentation, an own featured day. So stay tuned and continue to follow the Michigan Department of Civil Rights. And then finally, the featured division for the day is the Community Engagement Division. After all divisions have introduced themselves, the Community Engagement Division will then take over. We will have a panel discussion, and we will finish the evening with a question. We'll finish the evening with a question and answer series. Few housekeeping items. If you have any questions, please put them in the Q&A, and we will answer that. And we will then follow up and answer your questions after once we conclude our presentation today. So thank you, everyone. And first, I would like to introduce Mary Engelman, our interim executive director, Mary Engelman.
Thank you, Tony. As Anthony said, I'm Mary Engelman, interim executive director for the Michigan Department of Civil Rights. And this is an opportunity for your civil rights department to show you what we do. We handle over thousands, a few thousand investigations a year. We are in your communities. We are there to ensure that you have a place to go when discrimination happens. And this is an opportunity for you to see the expansiveness of your civil rights department that serves the state. And so with that, I will turn it over to Mr. Charles Schroeder.
Thank you, Mary. And if you could advance the slide. Okay, and thank you to my colleagues for participating in this session tonight. Everyone viewing online, thank you for being here. I'll just briefly give you an overview of our department and what it is we do, and then you'll hear from our specific divisions for more details about their functions. So we all work collectively to ensure our mission is being met. It's our goal to secure the full and equal enjoyment of civil rights in Michigan by eliminating unlawful discrimination, assuring equal protection, and effectively managing and embracing diversity. And we do that in three ways. One is through our educational programs. Those are informational and training sessions that we provide throughout the state from our department representatives. And the idea is to advise and educate people about the law as to not violate it. When acts or allegations of unlawful discrimination do occur, we have our investigative or enforcement unit that hears and investigate those concerns, all the while working to bring resolutions to matters that they hear. And our engagement division, which will be featured tonight, who are the physical presence and voice throughout the state. Next slide. So the two statutes that our department is charged with enforcing are the Elliott-Larsen Civil Rights Act and the Persons with Disabilities Civil Rights Act. And you see the protected classes and the areas in which we have jurisdiction there on the screen. And essentially, I want you to note as you preview those, everyone within Michigan is part of a protected class, right? So you all have civil rights protections being here. And it's very important to note in every facet of life within Michigan, you are protected. they're listed at the bottom. So whether or not you're a citizen, a visitor, if you live, work, have come to play, visit, or seek an education in Michigan, you are protected under the state civil rights statutes. Next slide. So that's an overview of the department. If you go back one slide, I just want to add to that, just giving you the general framework of what our department looks like in terms of structure. We are roughly 90 plus employees strong, covering the entire state of Michigan. We have a physical presence in 3 of our office locations, that being Grand Rapids, Lansing, and Detroit. Most of our employees are working remotely at this time within the COVID environment that we're all experiencing. So where we used to have a physical presence, not only in those offices throughout the state, we now mostly have a virtual or telephonic presence, doing our best to meet the needs of Michiganders. So we are, again, 90 plus employees, but we refer to ourselves as strong but mighty because we have a team, as you'll hear throughout the program, of dedicated professionals who work to ensure equal protection under the law. So our department is the administrative arm of the Civil Rights Commission. And for more about what the Civil Rights Commission is, now I'm going to ask Ms. Sylvia Elliott to turn on her camera and tell us more about the framework and makeup of the commission.
Good evening. My name is Sylvia Elliott. I am the Special Advisor to the Michigan Civil Rights Commission. In my short 3 minutes I have with you this evening, I would like to introduce you to the Michigan Civil Rights Commission. So, why does Michigan have a Civil Rights Commission? Much like the recent events of this year following the death of George Floyd, when we see many Americans marching and protesting for change, for police reform, for equality, for Black Lives Matter, just to name a few. Well, the 1960s civil rights movement also saw Americans marching and protesting for change. There was the 1963 March on Washington with Dr. Martin Luther King for civil and economic rights for African Americans and to end racism, and the infamous Bloody Sunday March in 1965 for voting rights. So it's in that context that the Michigan Civil Rights Commission was born. Michigan citizens wanted protections against discrimination in all areas of their lives: employment, housing, education, government services, and public accommodations, restaurants, movie theaters, restrooms, and stores. The Michigan Civil Rights Commission then was created in the Michigan Constitution in 1963 as an independent body for this very purpose. So, who is the Michigan Civil Rights Commission? The commission has 8 members who are appointed by the governor and confirmed by the Senate. No more than 4 members can be from the same political party, and each commissioner serves a 4-year staggered term. For more information on the individual commissioners, please visit our website as shown on the slide and click on the Michigan Civil Rights Commission tab. Next slide, please. As you see the next slide, I'm going to talk to you now about what does the commission actually do for you and for me. Well, the commission has broad powers. It is the duty and responsibility of the commission to investigate alleged discrimination against any person and secure equal protection of the Michigan civil rights laws. A few other duties include setting policy for the Department of Civil Rights, issuing final decisions and orders on civil rights complaints of discrimination, awarding monetary damages to individuals harmed by civil rights violations, hold hearings on topics of concern to the citizens of Michigan, such as the Flint water crisis hearings, the voter fraud hearings surrounding Prop 2, police reform, and most recently, the education hearings. How does the commission get all this done? The commission has a lot of responsibilities. So in 1965, the Department of Civil Rights was formed to carry out the work of the department, of the commission. The two civil rights laws, which were mentioned earlier, were passed in 1976. These laws will be discussed in more detail later. Showing on the screen are a couple of the commission highlights. In particular, the interpretive statement regarding the meaning of sex in Elliott Larson's Civil Rights Act. This interpretive statement from last year resulted in the commission beginning to take complaints based on gender identity and sexual orientation as a because of sex activity. You see things I've mentioned before, and most recently, education is a civil rights. Thank you. Charles.
Thank you, Sylvia. Next up, we'll have Jenny Scheid talk to you a little bit more about our enforcement division and their function.
Hi, everyone. My name is Jenny Scheid, and I am a manager with the Michigan Department of Civil Rights. I'm in the Enforcement Division located in the Detroit office. Today, I'm going to talk to you about two important parts of the Enforcement Division. The first is filing a complaint with our department, and the second is the complaint investigation process. So if a person wants to file a complaint with our department, the first thing they need to do is to contact us. They can do that by calling us on the phone. We have an 800 number, which is on your screen. It's 800-482-3604. You can also contact us online on our website at www.michigan.gov/MDCR. You can also contact us in writing or in person. However, as Charles mentioned before, please note that we currently have our offices closed due to the COVID-19 pandemic. So if you do need to meet with us in person, you do need to schedule an appointment. To file a complaint with our department, the complaint has to fall in one of 5 general areas of jurisdiction. Those 5 areas are employment, housing, education, public accommodation, and public service. Public service does also include law enforcement. When you contact us to file a complaint, you do need to do that within 180 days of the date that you suffered the adverse action or that you received the harm that had happened to you. So that means that when you contact us, you have to sign the complaint within 180 days. As Charles mentioned earlier, there are 2 state laws that our department enforces: the Elliott Larson Civil Rights Act and the Persons with Disabilities Civil Rights Act. Of those 2 state laws, though, there's a combination of 13 different protected classes that our department is able to take complaints on. Our complaints can be taken on religion, race, color, national origin, age, sex, disability, height, weight, arrest record, marital status, familial status, and genetic information. We also have 2 federal partners that we work with in order to complete investigations. The first is the EEOC, or the Equal Employment Opportunity Commission, that we work with regarding federal duly filed employment cases. We also work with the U.S. Department of Housing and Urban Development, or HUD, to investigate duly filed housing complaints. Next slide, please. So the next thing I'm going to talk about is our complaint investigation process. When a person contacts our department to file a complaint, they will be talking to, or they will be interacting with, our customer service representatives in the intake division. The customer service representatives will take the information, they will evaluate it to make sure it meets within our jurisdiction, and they will send out a complaint for the person to sign it in the presence of a notary and return to us. Once we receive the complaint back, we can then assign it to a civil rights investigator in the enforcement division for them to investigate. During the investigation, civil rights investigators will collect evidence from both parties, attempt to resolve the matter. They will analyze the information that's provided in the documentation. They will interview any relevant witnesses and decision makers. and at times conduct on-site visits to the areas in question. At the conclusion of an investigation, an investigative report is written with a determination as to whether or not the case should move forward in our process. If there is insufficient evidence of discrimination in the investigation, then the case is dismissed for insufficient evidence. However, if that case is dismissed for insufficient evidence, a person can still also request a reconsideration or appeal of that decision within 30 days. Now, if a person has a complaint that we do have enough evidence to proceed forward with, then that case is assigned to our staff attorneys and they conciliate the case during the conciliation process. Conciliation is where a person, where the staff attorney advocates on behalf of the person who filed the complaint to attempt to resolve the matter. If conciliation fails, then the staff attorney will at that point move the process along to specific other processes that we have, including a charge of discrimination, a Rule 12 hearing, a Michigan Civil Rights Commission decision, and even appeal to circuit court. But those details are going to be discussed more by our next presenter, Marcelina Trevino. Thank you.
Thank you, Jenny. So now hearing from Law and Policy in the Office of Legal Affairs is Marcelina Trevino.
Good evening, everyone, and thank you for having me. This is Marcelina speaking. So I want to go on and talk a little bit about the Office of Legal Affairs and our makeup. Our office is made up of 3 staff attorneys, a Freedom of Information Act coordinator who acts under the FOIA unit, a research specialist who is also our designated Michigan Department of Civil Rights Americans with Disabilities Act coordinator that you'll hear more about later. What is the legal affairs role? Well, you heard Jenny touch on a little bit about conciliation. And so briefly, I'm going to take you through that, but I want to reassure you that our following forum will include a whole session that's based on enforcement and legal. So conciliation, Jenny talked about, which is where our staff attorney takes the case and has a confidential conference with the respondent to try to resolve the matter. If that doesn't work, there is a charge, which is documents that are filed for a Rule 12 hearing. And I say Rule 12 because our commission has given us rules to abide by. And the Rule 12 is our hearings where we may take a charge in front of an administrative law judge who will hear both sides of the case and issue a recommendation, which is then given to the Michigan Civil Rights Commission for a final approval and opinion. In that opinion, the commission also has the right to issue damages and any other types of equitable relief. The other thing I'd like to share is that really our staff attorneys provide support not only to the designated teams that they're assigned to enforcement, but also to the Michigan Department of Civil Rights as a whole, providing different legal guidance. Let's move on now to the Freedom of Information Act unit, where the public has a right to review as well as ask for copies of information and business that we do. So for example, there could be a request for an investigative file. That can be done in writing via email or any other source as long as it's documented to our department. And that information is also found at our website that you've seen listed previously. The last thing I'd like to cover quickly is our reconsideration unit. Jenny discussed about the potential findings in an investigation. The first being not even taking a complaint when someone calls. Now, there is an appeal process for that, which you may appeal within 30 days or within the jurisdictional time frame given. The second is where the department decides to dismiss the complaint because there is insufficient evidence to move forward, or there isn't enough information at that point to move forward. A person has 30 days from the dismissal to file an appeal or a reconsideration request with our department. Again, you'll have an opportunity at our next forum to really look and get to know more about the enforcement process and the investigative process as well. So thank you for your time, and I'll turn it right back over to Charles.
Thank you, Marcelina. Thanks for that information. So up next, we have Annie Rasky, who's going to describe a little bit more about her function within the Division on Deaf, Deafblind, and Hard of Hearing and the work that they do. Annie?
Hi, this is Annie speaking. Thank you for having me here today. I really appreciate this opportunity. My name is Annie Huraski, and my name sign is A on the chin here. I'm the Director of the Division on Deaf, Deafblind, and Hard of Hearing. I wanted to briefly explain the history of the division, and we're based in 1937. We're the first state agency for the deaf and hard of hearing in the U.S. And our office was set up in Detroit. It was based in Detroit. And we had a team of 3 people that work with us. And what we're doing on our real mission is, our division's mission is to have effective communication for Michigan residents who identify as deaf, deafblind, or hard of hearing. And as a whole, as our state. In that population, we have approximately 7.4% of Michigan residents who identify as deaf, deafblind, or hard of hearing. And we also have the governor appointed 13 members of an advisory council that meet 3 times a year. And they provide input and recommendations, and they advise our office. And one of the key things that we do, we really stress that a lot of people in the community, businesses, companies, agencies, really lots of different types of places, they think a person who might have a hearing loss in the community, they might think, well, there's not very many of them, but actually it's quite diverse how people identify and how they access services and communicate. So our job is to advocate and increase awareness about residents who have Michiganders who have hearing loss. It includes working with other state agencies services with Michigan, and working with partnership being with the fundraising and knowing about lifting the awareness, including different experiences and preferences. And some of the things include services that we provide, including a technical assistance and how to get interpreting services, or how to accommodate in general, including assisted devices and captioning services. And we also provide training as well, specifically on how to work and interact with people who have vision loss as well. And we work with a lot of education, a huge need we have in our community. We're going to be doing more about this in the future forum and providing more information. Thank you.
Thank you, Annie. And now hearing from the State ADA Compliance Division, reporting out is Ms. Kelly Frake.
Thank you, Charles. This is Kelly. Can we move back to the ADA slides, please?
Minor technical difficulties we're working through. Bear with us. Appreciate your patience. Again, just to repeat for anybody who's logged on, we're experiencing some minor technical difficulties. If you bear with us, we're getting those corrected. Kelly, if you just give it a moment, we'll be right back with you. Okay, I'm getting word from our wizards behind the curtain that they're still experiencing difficulties. Kelly, are you able to discuss the division without the aid of your slide?
This is Kelly. Just give me one moment.
Sure. And again, for all the viewers, please bear with us as we work through this unforeseen issue.
This is Kelly Frake. I work for the State ADA Compliance Division in the Michigan Department of Civil Rights. I'm a compliance analyst. And what we do is, while we do comply with the Persons with Disabilities Civil Rights Act, which was mentioned earlier as the state law, we also comply with the federal law, which is the Americans with Disabilities Act. And in fact, this year it's the 30th anniversary of the Americans with Disabilities Act. And we have partnered with a number of state organizations to put on a few educational events, virtual events, that will take us through to the end of this year to help celebrate the 30th anniversary. So if you are interested on any more information about the 30th anniversary educational events, I do encourage you to visit www.michigan.gov/ADA30. That's www.michigan.gov/ADA30.
Kelly,
So,
fantastic work on the fly. We appreciate it.
absolutely. So it looks like we have the slide back. So as I mentioned, we do follow the ADA and the Persons with Disabilities Civil Rights Act. Obviously, our division focuses on the ADA. We also have an executive order in Michigan, number 2004-31, which created the state ADA coordinator position. And our state ADA coordinator for state government is Kim Woolridge. But the executive order also went a step further by designating that each executive branch department, so whether it's MDCR or Department of Transportation or Department of Education, every executive branch department also has a designated ADA coordinator to take complaints, to assist with providing reasonable accommodations to the public. That is their role, that is their designation. And I have provided a link, which we will be sharing these resources on our website later. So I have provided the link to the State of Michigan ADA Coordinator page. But if you do want to visit that yourself, it's www.michigan.gov/ADA. You can also access that page on any State of Michigan website by going to the bottom of the State of Michigan page, and there should be a link that says ADA. That will take you there as well. So State ADA Compliance Division, what do we do? What are our core responsibilities? One of the things we do is we coordinate, obviously, ADA compliance within the executive branch, and that could be helping Secretary of State ensure that upcoming voting is going to be accessible to persons with disabilities. We'll work with them, provide them guidance, to working with DTMB to make sure that all of our state websites are also accessible to persons with disabilities. We also serve as the ADA liaison on behalf of the governor's office. So we help keep the governor and her team informed of the current issues that are facing persons with disabilities in the state of Michigan. And then finally, we oversee the state's ADA grievance procedure. So while you can file a disability discrimination complaint with Michigan Department of Civil Rights against an employer, or if you against a grocery store, hotel, hospital, any public business, the grievance procedure actually allows you to contact state departments if you are not able to access one of their programs, services, activities, or if you do require an accommodation to access a program, service, or activity. So for example, if you wanted to attend a meeting like we're having today, but you require an ASL interpreter, you would contact the state ADA coordinator and you can ask, hey, are you going to provide an ASL interpreter for this upcoming event? And the ADA coordinator would work with you to make sure that was accomplished so you could attend. Next slide, please. So how do we coordinate compliance? There's a number of different ways. One of the important things that we do is we conduct ADA training. So all of the designated ADA coordinators for the different departments, our state ADA coordinator, Kim, and myself are responsible for training them and making sure that they understand their roles and responsibilities as ADA coordinators when they're working with the public. The other thing that we do is oversee statewide accessibility initiatives. So I mentioned earlier, we do a lot of work with DTMB regarding our website compliance, making sure that all of our websites are accessible to screen readers and to persons with disabilities, making sure that PDFs are accessible on the website. That's just one example. We also partner with internal and external organizations. So of course we partner with our internal state of Michigan departments, but we also will partner externally with advocacy organizations like Disability Network, the Brain Injury Association of Michigan. We will work with them on specific challenges that they are experiencing or the communities they serve are experiencing. And then finally, and most importantly, we provide guidance and perspective to state leadership. It's very important to get director and leadership buy-in when we're trying to make our state programs and services more accessible. So that is an integral part of what we do. And I just want to leave you with one more thought, that while we do exist to help the departments, we're here to make sure that they understand how to be compliant and how to abide by the Americans with Disabilities Act. We do this to serve you. We do this to make sure that our state programs are accessible, that you can reach out to us if you need an accommodation or if you need support. So I do encourage you to take advantage of your ADA coordinators in the different departments and to take advantage of the accommodations that we can provide you as state entities. So with that, I'll turn it back to Charles. Thank you.
Thank you, Kelly. Great work. We appreciate the information. So next up, we have Anthony Ianni, who's going to talk about his Relentless Tour and the work he does there. Thank you.
Thank you, Charles. Well, good evening, everybody. Hope everybody's doing well and staying safe during this interesting time we are dealing with. My name is Anthony Ianni, and I am head of the Relentless Tour, which is the Michigan Department of Civil Rights' anti-bullying initiative. The initiative was started in 2013. So it'll be 7 years this October that it was started. And it's the first ever grassroots initiative of its kind in the state of Michigan. This kind of initiative has never been done for in the state of Michigan. And so we've been going all over to different high schools, middle schools, elementary schools, private schools, charter schools, as well as different conferences all over the state and around the country, promoting autism awareness and anti-bullying awareness through my stories. Growing up with autism, I was diagnosed when I was 4 years old, to becoming the first Division I college basketball player in NCAA history with an autism diagnosis at Michigan State University. So for you Spartans out there, go green, go white. And I also talk about my stories growing up being bullied as a kid. And so and the main reason why I started this initiative and why I partnered up with Michigan Department of Civil Rights is because 65 to 90% of kids with autism in our country, they are the #1 targets for bullies in schools across the United States. So it's one of the biggest reasons why I started the initiative and why I brought it to Michigan Department of Civil Rights. And so I share my stories of growing up being bullied as a kid because of my autism and because of my height. I'm 6'9" with a size 18 shoe, so I'm very tall. And the main messages that we have for these kids in these schools are, the first one is be careful what you say and do to others, because you never know who that person's going to end up being like in the future. And the second message we have for these kids, as well as just schools in general, is don't just go out and be the change you wish to see in life. Go out and make that change. And in the last 3 years, the Relentless Tour has spoken to over 173,000 individuals in the state of Michigan, as well as around the country. And it has been to over 400 schools and events around the country and around the state of Michigan as well. So we're staying very busy, and obviously we expect another busy year this year. If anybody is interested in booking the Relentless Tour for this upcoming school year or any future events, our website is www.relentlesstour.com. Again, that's www.relentlesstour.com. And you click on the icon that says Bring Anthony, that's me, to your school. You fill out a form, and then your request form comes to me, and then you'll work directly with me. So again, thank you guys so much. Hope to hear from you soon. And Charles, I'll turn it back over to you.
Well, I'll be filling in for that. Well, obviously we're having some, once again, having some technical difficulties, but good afternoon and good evening once again. And this is Anthony Lewis, and I'll be filling in next. Thank you, Anthony. And next we'll be turning next. Next up, we have Alfredo Hernandez, our equity officer, who will be talking about all of our efforts regarding equity and implicit bias. And Alfredo?
Thank you, Tony. Hello, everybody. My name is Alfredo Hernandez, and I serve as the Equity Officer for the Michigan Department of Civil Rights. A little bit about the Equity Office. It was established in January of 2018 with the purpose of overseeing the internal and external initiatives centered on increasing racial consciousness and cultural awareness to operationalize equity long-term. The Equity Office established MDCR's internal DEI initiative in August of 2018, and a core team made up of directors and staff from all units and divisions began the work of understanding at a deeper level the root causes of discrimination and the impact of implicit bias at the personal, interpersonal, institutional, and structural level. This initiative has led us to countless hours of work with state and national experts, and it currently serves as a template for organizational cultural shifting across the state and across many state agencies. MDCR is also a leading agency providing a number of customized training solutions to help organizations understand how implicit bias impacts us, the work we do, and the people we serve, as well as solutions to debias us at the interpersonal, institutional, and structural level. MDCR established its Council for Government and Education on Equity and Inclusion in 2018, and the council is made up of leaders in government and education who meet twice a year to share best practices and explore solutions through a racial equity lens. The Equity Office is also certified in the Intercultural Development Inventory, a globally recognized tool designed to help organizations measure, monitor, and evaluate cultural shifting. We're using this tool internally, and we're also working with agencies across the state to provide coaching and guidance in this work. The Equity Office also collaborates with experts in the field of equity, including the Government Alliance on Race and Equity, and it is currently a part of a task force on racial disparities established by the Governor's Office as an advisory body developing strategies to mitigate the impact of COVID-19 throughout communities of color. For more information regarding the Equity Office, you may reach me at hernandez83@michigan.com. Thank you.
Well, Alfredo, thank you very much. Thank you very much for that. Next up, we have our feature group, and I have the opportunity to, my name is Anthony Lewis, and I have the pleasure of serving as the director, along with my colleague, Mark Bishop, director of the Community Engagement Division. And our division is really there and what our division does is it's meant to enhance the communication around common issues. And also we facilitate outreach and education through relationship building, community organizing, businesses. In essence, we are the face of the department. We're the folks that you see doing your training and development. We're the folks that you will see at our different meetings and all our different initiatives that we participate in and that we partner with throughout the state. Now, first, I'd like to introduce who we are, and as my team and hopefully as my team is introduced, hopefully, like I said, you can show you'll be able to show your video and then we'll begin a little question and answer session for a little panel discussion for our team. As stated before, my name is Anthony Lewis. Everyone calls me Tony, but my name is Anthony Lewis, and I'm the Director of Business and Community Affairs for the Michigan Department of Civil Rights. Also have my colleague, Mark Bishop, who is the Director of Strategic Operations. We also have Jeanette Johnson, who we affectionately call JJ, who's our communications specialist. Also, we have Sheila, administrative support, but better known as the glue that holds us all together. That behind the scenes, she keeps us, the person that behind the scenes She keeps us organized and keeps us on task. So, and then obviously, yes, Charles, who will be rejoining us shortly as our civil rights specialist. And also we have Gwen Moffitt, who's our community engagement liaison based out of West Michigan, based out of Grand Rapids. And she will be able to give you all of the work. She'll be able to explain and talk about all of the work and projects that she's involved in West Michigan. But we also have Marissa Gomez Garcia, who's our community engagement liaison out of the Lansing office, but also on the west side of the state. And she also interacts with our Hispanic Latino community. And once again, you will have the opportunity to hear from Marissa with all of the work that she's been doing around the migrant farm worker population and all the work and partnerships she has with our Hispanic and Latino community. And last but not least, we have Melissa Keysweater, who's our tribal liaison, our Native American specialist, but she does so much more in working with Alfredo in the equity work and the presentations, and also all the work that she does with the social studies standards for the Michigan Department of Education. So as you can see, we are a small staff, but we cover the state of Michigan. We're a small staff, but we cover the state of Michigan the best way that we can. So first up, I'm going to ask the first question. I'm going to ask this of Mark. So Mark, how would you describe your work?
Well, a lot of the work thank you, Tony. This is Mark Bishop. A lot of the work that we do in community engagement is in assessing and in assisting communities with technical assistance and training. So we often think of ourselves as connecting people and resources to address any problems that they may have around civil rights related issues. And we not only take a statewide approach, but we also look nationally. And how might something that came up, in some other state, some other jurisdiction play out here? And how do we help our people best prepare for, respond to, or recover from anything that's, again, civil rights related?
All right, Mark, thank you very much for that. So now I'd like to introduce Marissa Gomez Garcia. And Marissa, so what are some of the, so how would you describe your work and the partnerships and the work that you do here for the department and for the residents here at the state of Michigan?
Good evening, everybody. This is Marissa Gomez Garcia, and the population that I serve is the Hispanic or Latino community, which includes immigrants, farm workers, refugees, and the undocumented. One of my primary roles is to focus on farm workers. And how I do that is I attend and provide support to the Interagency Migrant Services Committee and to the 5 subcommittees of the IMSC, an example being the Data Task Force. Also, when time permits, I am able to go to meetings that are held by the Migrant Resource Councils. There are 9 Migrant Resource Councils throughout the state, and each Migrant Resource Council covers several counties. Another one of my responsibilities is connecting with community organizations. For example, the Latino Community Coalition in Grand Rapids, Michigan. Also, the Immigrant and Refugee Resource Collaborative in Lansing, Michigan. Normally those meetings are, like I said, Latino Community Coalition is held in Grand Rapids, and the Immigrant and Refugee Resource Collaborative meeting is held in Lansing, Michigan. But due to COVID, all the meetings that I currently attend are virtual. Finally, an example, one of the special projects that I engage in is the 2020 Enumerations Profile Study. Thank you, Tony.
All right, Marissa, thank you. All right, Marissa, thank you. Next up, we have Gwen. Next up, we have Gwen Moffitt, who is our, who was our re-engagement liaison in West Michigan, and with a variety of duties. Gwen, how would you describe your work?
Pardon me, I'm sorry, I did not mute my mic. Okay, we'll start all over again. Good evening, my name is Gwen Moffitt, and I am the West Michigan Community Engagement Liaison based in our Grand Rapids office. I'm responsible for community engagement in the communities of Battle Creek, Benton Harbor, St. Joe, Grand Rapids, Holland, Kalamazoo, and Muskegon. So for the most part then, my assignment is geographical. This engagement is effected through continuous meeting interactions with individuals and representatives of community organizations and institutions in these geographical spaces. I'm also the coordinator and facilitator of MDCR's ALPAC chapters in West Michigan. These include ALPACs in Battle Creek, Darien County, Grand Rapids, Kalamazoo County, and Ottawa County. I assist with the planning of steering committee meetings and community forums to support engagement between law enforcement and the communities they serve. Again, ALPAC is the acronym for Advocates and Leaders for Police and Community Trust. And these are essentially community policing organizations. Additionally, I serve as MDCR's partnership representative with the Kalamazoo Truth, Racial Healing and Transformation Enterprise, which is a W.K. Kellogg Foundation initiative.
All right, Gwen, thank you very much for that. And some of the initiatives that Gwen spoke of, we'll be getting into a little bit deeper. But I wanted everyone to have the opportunity to introduce themselves. And so next up, we have our illustrious facilitator for the day, Charles. Charles, how would you explain the work that you do for the citizens here at state?
Thank you, Tony, and it's glad to be back with everyone. Again, technical difficulties, I think we got those squared away. So I caught the tail end of the other comments that were made. I won't be redundant, but essentially my colleagues and I are really the face and voice of the department in our respective communities that we serve. So just being out, staying engaged with communities and all the community functions that we're able to attend used to be a physical presence. And again, with the COVID environment, it's more of a virtual presence, trying to stay engaged as best as possible to hear community concerns, channel them back to the department, to have their services that we provide within the department available to assist communities that have a need that we can fill a gap with.
All right, Charles, thank you very much. Melissa, how would you describe your work?
I'm sorry, did you say Melissa or Marissa?
Melissa, yes, thank you.
Hello, my name is Melissa Kieswetter. I'm the Tribal Liaison and Native American Specialist for the Department of Civil Rights. How would I describe my work? It's different every single day. Serving as a liaison to the 12 federally recognized tribes means that on any given day, any particular issue or conversation can be taking place. And really, I would probably, in a nutshell, I would describe my work when it comes to being the tribal liaison. There's a few other hats that I wear, like we all do. But when it comes to the tribal liaison responsibility, I would say that my main goal is to elevate the Native voice and to invite it to the table where it's very often neglected or ignored. And so I really work hard to advocate on behalf of the tribes and the tribal communities within the state to ensure that their voices and their needs and interests are raised to the level so that they are taken into consideration when it comes to policy development, programs, and resource development. Thank you.
All right, Melissa, thank you. Thank you very much. As you can see, with our team, they have a wide range of responsibilities, and we serve the residents here of the state of Michigan in a variety of different ways. Now what I'd like to do is, these are some of our, as you heard, some of the work that we do is focused around advocates and leaders for police and community trust, which we're going to have a panel discussion shortly, and Charles will kind of give us a background. and understanding of what that is, and how we engage the public, and how Michigan benefits from it. And next, we also have our truth that Gwen spoke of, our Truth, Racial Healing and Transformation Kellogg, the Kellogg Foundation's Truth, Racial Healing and Transformation Enterprise. And Gwen is going to give you a brief background and how that work and how the work that she does regarding that, how that interrelates to, how that interrelates here for us here in the state of Michigan, and how that's benefiting us. And then we'll have Mark, Mark, who will discuss our crisis response team. Given the climate of today and the many instances we've seen right now, many instances of bias incidents or potential hate crimes, Mark will kind of give you an overview of the difference between what is a hate crime and what is a biased incident. And I think that are very interesting. And last but not least, we are very active and engaged in developing the next generation of civil rights leaders through our Civil Rights Youth Academy partnership with the University of Michigan. And stay tuned for this because one of our future forums is going to be entirely student-led by the fellows in the Civil Rights Youth Academy. So very exciting times. But now what I want to do, I want all of my team to, I'm going to stop sharing my screen, and I want all my team to turn their, because I want to have a panel discussion. I want my team to turn on the cameras, and I am going to stop sharing my screen. And now I want to, like I said, if my team will, kind of show themselves as we just have a discussion. So Charles, we talked about the ALPACs, and which are the advocates and leaders for police and community trust. We are facilitators and supporters of ALPAC in many different regions. So can you give us what is it, and and how do you believe, and how has Michigan benefited from it, especially given now in this time of unrest? Especially now in this time of unrest, how has that benefited?
Okay, so ALPAC was really born out of Detroit, and Detroit has the longest standing chapter in Michigan, I believe in excess of 25 years. And it really is at the onset of the formation of the ALPAC, you had community and law enforcement leadership in the area who decided that they needed a dedicated venue and a continued effort to really sit down across the table and meet about issues affecting their community and the barriers to building stronger trust between law enforcement and community. With the Michigan Roundtable for Diversity and Inclusion, who's been the pioneer behind that effort, we've replicated that model throughout the rest of the state, brought it to different communities, introduced the concept to them about meeting continually, having community leadership and law enforcement be engaged on a continued basis to discuss the issues, again, that are affecting each respective community in which they take place. I help to facilitate those discussions in Flint and Saginaw and attend the Detroit ALPAC and assist with some programming there. And how has Michigan benefited? So that's a great question. There are countless stories from membership who talk about the ability to advance their understanding and really attack those barriers to deepening levels of trust. But the most recent incident involving the death of George Floyd, which, if you'd allow me, I'd like just a brief moment of silence for the life and memory of George Floyd. Thank you. So again, back to that point, in the wake of the George Floyd death, there were protests going on nationwide. Here in Michigan, one of our sheriffs in Genesee County in and around the Flint area was featured nationally in news venues. He was the gentleman, as it's referred to, put down his baton and gear and walked with and talked with protesters when they came to his community. And you saw a host and a range of law enforcement in that community partner and walk with and have evolving conversations, productive conversations, even after that incident and event. They charge not only the all pact, but the relations formed prior to these incidents with mostly seeing peaceful demonstrations and protests that have later led to productive coalitions forming, meetings even outside of the all pact effort to continue that conversation on an ongoing basis. But again, you'll find many community leaders and law enforcement professionals who have attributed and pointed back to the all pact effort as building over years those foundations of trust. So very proud to be a part of that effort and initiative and involved with that. So thank you.
All right, Charles, thank you very much. And if anyone is interested in finding out more about the advocates and leaders for police and community trust, they are located in multiple locations throughout the state. So if you are interested, please feel free to contact us. You can contact me at my email address, which is Lewis, Lewisa, the number 4, at michigan.gov. That's Lewis A4 at michigan.gov. If you would like some additional information regarding ALPAC and the mission, and if you want to get involved in your particular area. So now I want to turn to Marissa. I mean, Marissa, you've been focusing a lot of regular time on the migrant farm worker population. Obviously, a growing season, and given what are some of the issues and some of the challenges facing the migrant community, and how does that relate to civil rights?
Well, Tony, some of the issues and challenges that the farm worker community faces, especially now during COVID-19, can be whether there is equity in employment, are they being discriminated in their employment, equity in housing. Agricultural employers provide agricultural labor housing throughout Michigan so that their crops can be harvested during the agricultural season. And you have to ask yourself whether agricultural employers are offering or providing housing to female workers and farm workers with families, because nowadays they have a lot of H-2A workers, and the majority of the H-2A workers coming from out of the country come from Mexico or sometimes Haiti, and the majority of them are male, and they provide housing to them. So you have to ask yourself whether they're also providing or offering housing to female workers or farm workers who come with a family and would like to house the whole family. Another issue might be equity in education with online learning. Given COVID-19, online learning from K through 12, our farm worker children have access to computers or other devices where they can learn, and do they have internet service? Equity and access to healthcare. One of the things that many state departments and legal services and other advocates for farm workers were quite concerned whether farm workers would be able to be given health care given the climate of COVID-19. Thankfully, due to the advocacy of several individuals who advocate for farm workers or support farm workers, that issue was brought up. And again, thankfully, through some individuals that requested, the government was able to say that emergency only services, also known as emergency Medicaid, would provide coverage for testing for COVID-19 and the treatment of COVID-19 regardless of immigration status. The only thing that they take into account is the individual or the household income. A couple other examples, equity in granting of small business loans to Hispanic or Latino or owned businesses. You have to ask yourself whether Hispanic or Latino owned businesses, did they receive their fair share of small business loans during this time? or were they discriminated? Um, Another example, equity in the distribution of the stimulus check. We have seen that undocumented individuals or individuals that are married to undocumented individuals, and those individuals are U.S. citizens or legal permanent residents, they did not receive the stimulus check. So you have to ask yourself whether that was discrimination, and should everyone who pays income taxes should have received the stimulus check.
Oh, thank you, Marissa. Thank you very much for that. Thank you very much for that information. So now, Gwen, I have a question. Gwen, I have a question for you. I mean, now with the current climate of civil unrest and COVID-19 bringing a spotlight to the racial disparities, the historical and current systemic racism that we find today. What is the Truth, Racial Healing, and Transformation Enterprise? And currently they are in my understanding is they're in 4 locations in Michigan. And so how are they impacting these issues, or what is the goal of the Truth, Racial Healing, and Transformation Enterprise?
Okay. Well, first of all, in terms of the Truth, Racial Healing, and Transformation process, or some refer to it as an enterprise, it was developed by the W.K. Kellogg Foundation and 174 national partners to help communities heal and produce sustainable change. And the emphasis absolutely is on transformation and on healing. One of the things, or in terms of its overall goal, it is to jettison the belief in a hierarchy of human value that sustains racism. So in terms of our current issues, these issues in terms of racial disparities, historical current systemic racism during this pandemic, one of the things that the TRHT in Kalamazoo has done is to continue the work of all of its design teams, such as the law design team, which was instrumental in helping to launch and actually served as the catalyst for launching the Kalamazoo County All Pact in February. Also, there is a housing and education separation team. The housing team, or those on the housing side of that team, have been instrumental in helping to support and advance a housing ordinance in the city of Kalamazoo. And additionally, there is the expectation there will be a commission to accept complaints, and that will apply to all types of individuals in the community, irrespective of their identities. There are other teams as well, teams that focus on arts and culture, economics, workforce development. And I certainly would like to highlight the fact that the TRHT Kalamazoo has a cohort of racial healing circle facilitators, of which I am a member. And they have adapted the heretofore in-person healing circles to a virtual healing circle for community members and organizations. And there have been an increase and influx of organizations saying, we would like to have these healing circles at our organization, and whether they're nonprofit or for-profit. These racial healing circles focus on helping participants heal from trauma due to racism, and it assists others to see all as human beings. Again, with this hierarchy of human values, sometimes there are individuals who may feel that they are superior to different others. But after going through the healing circle process, people walk away, they have testified that they've walked away with a different perspective in terms of the humanization of folks. And as we think particularly in this time where we've had the death of George Floyd, that is particularly important. The TRHT also hosts what is called Truth Talks. And these particular venues are done virtually, and they focus on a number of community issues and provide these panel discussions. And certainly any of our viewers can be a part of that by going to the TRHT Kalamazoo website. And they do this through a Facebook Live platform. Thank you.
All right, Gwen, thank you very much for that informative. Obviously, the Truth, Racial Healing and Transformation Enterprise is located, currently it's located in 4 cities here in Michigan. That would be Flint, Lansing, it'll be Flint, Lansing, Battle Creek, and Kalamazoo. So if you have any, please reach out to us and we can connect you with the particular organization in your region if you are interested. Mark, I've got a question for you because I know one of the things that what is the difference? What is the difference between a hate crime and a bias incident, especially given in today's climate where, especially given in today's climate? What's the difference?
Thank you, Tony. Well, I think we need to look a little bit at our history here. In following the September 11th terrorist attacks in 2001, the department created the crisis response team. And what we do is we monitor and assess both bias incidents and hate crimes across the state. Now, technically, a hate crime or a bias motivated crime has to have a criminal element. There has to be a crime committed. So someone showing up in your community and yelling racial slurs or holding a divisive protest, that's actually protected activity. And we would call that a bias incident because it's certainly hateful, but it doesn't rise to the level of a crime. So first, it has to have a criminal element to it. That's the easiest way to distinguish the two.
All right, Mark, and thank you. And just if you would like to learn more about the differences between a hate crime or a bias incident, please reach out to our office. We do joint presentations on hate crimes with the Michigan Attorney General's office. So, and we do joint trainings to understand from the enforcement side, in terms of from the Attorney General's office, which is the criminal side, and from our side, which would be bias incidents or incidents of discrimination that may not rise to the level of a crime. But now I have a question for you, Melissa. I have a question for you. What are some of the current issues and challenges facing our Native American community? And how do those issues relate to the work that you do on a daily basis? And how does that relate to some of the current issues of the day?
Well, certainly during this time of the pandemic, the Native American community is hit very hard, like many of our minority populations. So the crisis has had a severe impact on tribal communities, mainly because the economic development that happens within tribal communities is their main source of income for their government services. So without having enterprise and economic development opportunities, they have no funding coming in. When all those things are shut down, they have no funding coming in to provide the staffing, the services, the healthcare, the elder care, and all of the other things that are happening. So many of our tribal communities in Michigan, after experiencing a shutdown of their enterprises, had significant layoffs. They are not back to full force. They are having to cut numerous programs and scholarships. So that is certainly a current issue. Also, natural resources, the protection and management of natural resources. Line 5, many of us are pretty familiar with the pipeline issue. That is something that all of our tribal communities here in Michigan are working very hard. So when we talk about environmental justice, we talk about climate issues, those are all things that the tribal communities are very, very committed to. So we'll see that many of our state agencies are involved in those discussions. And one of the other things that I think we're seeing right now, which has also really been elevated to the national level, are the issues of mascots and Native American imagery. And after numerous corporations put pressure on the Washington football team to change their name and to eliminate their mascot and the R word, we're seeing that trickle down to state and local levels, which we are very pleased about. It's certainly giving momentum and a sense of urgency to have Native Americans respected in the way that they want to be respected, and to not be respected, or to have the methods that they don't want in place, that so often our institutions and non-Native people are saying this is a way of respecting and honoring you. And we're hearing the tribal communities and our Native communities and Indian countries saying that's not what we've asked for. That's not what we want. We want to be visible in other ways. We don't want to be represented in caricatures. We don't want to be represented by having our spiritual and sacred items as your logo. We don't want the R word used. It is equivalent to the N word. And so we're talking about a lot of trauma and a lot of issues that are being raised to a significant level right now. And very thankful that the department, that I as tribal liaison have had the support of the department and have the relationships with the tribes that I have, that we are addressing the mascot issue pretty much on a daily basis right now. We're thankful that, again, there are a number of schools in Michigan that are willing to have the conversation to eliminate their mascots. I would say that those are our three key issues and or conversations that we're seeing the tribes have a dialogue about daily.
All right, Melissa, thank you. That's great information, excellent information. Thank you. And I want to also stress that if anyone has any questions they would like to ask, please place them in the Q&A here in the question and answer, the Q&A section here on your Zoom screen. Charles, I have a question for you. How does division, how do we improve relations with our communities of color?
Well, specifically, we have liaisons, not only, I think I referenced before, our geographic regions, which we're responsible for, they also have racial and ethnic representation within each of the communities in our geographic territories. But specifically, I'll speak to my experience. So I am the liaison between the Arab, Muslim, and Middle Eastern community and the department and our commission. So one of the things that I focus on is not only presence within that community to develop partnerships and trust, but also providing educational resources to the service providers, the organizations, and the leadership in that community, so they're aware of our services, the different divisions that could be assistive to those communities within MDCR. And that truly leads to what we find in ethnic and immigrant communities is that there's a trepidation, a hesitancy in reaching out to a government agency for assistance, for a myriad of reasons, and helping to put a face to our department and a working relationship, fostering trust over years within those specific communities, I think has led us to hearing from people that have issues that they're facing that is under our purview or our jurisdiction, so that we can assist them. One of the things that I often say to audiences, and I've said in many different forms recently, is that if you don't report it, it's as though it didn't happen, and we know that things do happen, but if we don't hear about them, our folks can't take any action. So staying engaged with communities within the Arab, Muslim, Middle Eastern community, we have some good partnerships, two of which are Access, which is the community social services group based out of Dearborn, but they have a presence all throughout the region, and the ACRL, which is the Arab Civil Rights League. Both of those, we have partnerships with them, whereas our enforcement unit investigators are connected to those groups, hear complaints that come in, from their visitors on a daily basis, and they're connected with individuals within our department they know to make contact to when they have issues that fall under our jurisdiction. I oversee those partnerships and help to maintain those, and if there's any barriers to those being more productive. We work to erase those barriers and get people again back to contacting our department so we can be helpful. As far as the other ethnic or racial communities for which we cover within Michigan, if some of my colleagues want to mention some of the work that they do, I think it would be helpful.
I would be happy to. Thank you, Charles. So as the tribal liaison, many people may not realize that the Executive Order 2019-17 is the executive order put in place by the governor, which requires that every state agency has a tribal liaison. It also provides the guidance and the framework around government to government relations, because with 12 federally recognized tribes here in the state of Michigan, there is something that that again guides and puts a framework around government to government, so between the state and the tribe. So as a liaison, that is certainly, I have that support of that executive order, but also work with interagency. There's an intertribal group called the United Tribes of Michigan that all 12 federally recognized tribes are members of. So I report out at every United Tribes meeting. And there is also a Confederation of Tribal Ed Directors that is in place, and that is a consortium of 12, all 12 tribes education departments. And so I provide updates, answer questions, collaborate on resources, things of that nature. So really being able to connect on various levels and in various platforms with the tribal community. And then also by being the sole person who administers the Michigan Indian Tuition Waiver, which is bound by legislation, Public Act 174 of 1976. That is one of my primary responsibilities, and that allows me to connect daily with tribes education departments, tribes enrollment departments, and our Native students throughout the state of Michigan. So those are just a few of the ways.
Okay, thank you, Melissa. Marissa or Gwen, anything you'd like to add?
Well, Charles, one of the things I do is I'm part of the Migrant Child Task Force, which is one of the subcommittees of the IMSC. And one of the things they do is they go on outreach events. And each year they pick 4 regions to go out to. And last year we went to 4 different ones. This year they picked 4 different ones. Unfortunately, because of COVID-19, we missed our first event. But the second event we held on July 27th. And as though we normally try to invite as many people as we can to the event, this time we were trying to limit to at least 10, not too many after 10. And that was for the purpose that even though we're going to be outside, we want to make sure that we were going to social distance sufficiently. We did have masks on, and those who wanted to had gloves. And we went on outreach on the 27th to at least 8 or 9 different migrant housing camps, and that's how we reach the farm worker community. The purpose is to go out and check out things and see if there's any issues when talking to the farm workers that we do encounter, if there's any issues that they have. And that's one of the ways that we keep in touch with the farm worker community.
Thank you. It's great info. Gwen?
Yes, in a lot of the work that I do, because I'm in a number of communities, there are organizations that have representation. For example, in Grand Rapids, whether it's the Grand Rapids chapter of the NAACP or the Latino Community Coalition. In Kalamazoo, there's El Concilio, Isaac, a number of organizations there. There's also the Grand Rapids Pride organization. In Muskegon, we have the Social Justice Commission, and I am involved in their meetings, and they have a gun violence subcommittee. And also in Battle Creek, there is an African American collaborative. And at one point, there was interest from the other communities to form African American collaboratives in their communities as well. So there's always this opportunity for cross-pollination. And as has been mentioned before, in terms of platforms for problem solving that is ongoing, we show up. And so presence and being on those problem-solving bodies is beneficial for the community.
Great. Thank you, Gwen. Appreciate that.
All right, thank you. So I have a question for everyone. Now how are we? Given the COVID environment and everyone working remotely, I have a question for my team. So how are we staying engaged? How are we staying engaged now in terms of with the lack of travel and all? So how are we staying engaged with our respective communities and our respective responsibilities?
For my part, I am absolutely staying engaged. There are days when I'm Zooming from morning to night, when I'm attending some of the commission meetings, for example, the Grand Rapids Commission meetings, where there have been issues about defunding the police. There's the protests, and just a number of other things where people are saying we need to put that money back into communities. So participating on their meetings. One evening, a meeting started at 7 and it went until about 1:30. So between that and also as part of my role as a community engagement liaison, I host Zoom meetings for some of the LPACs. So we have been continuing to have various topics. For example, in Berrien County, they held a community forum that was entitled "A Community Conversation on the Impact of George Floyd's Death." And around that, people came up with various areas that they wanted to talk a little bit more about. And so between policing, education, and health, they've set up a subsequent meeting and they will be doing that. In Kalamazoo, we recently had a community forum that was more of a community action forum. And we will be hosting the sequel to that, where people will be talking about transparency and accountability in the prosecutorial process, as well as youth education in those particular venues in Kalamazoo. So there is no shortage. It is the same, if not more so. And as I was reminded by one of my colleagues, because I'm not in a car driving all the time, I am actually interacting with more people on a more frequent basis, which I welcome. Thank you.
All right, Gwen, thank you. I think that a lot of us, throughout our now in this COVID environment, I like to say I've done more traveling now than I did, when we weren't working remotely. I've had the opportunity to be in the UP without having actually to drive the 8 hours there to get there. So this is so we've had it, like I said. So yes, we definitely had to adjust, our operations and adjust how we do things to a certain level. But we've also, I think we've also done a good job trying to maintain that productivity. I see another question, and now I see another question, and I'll take this one. It says, does MPCR work with the LGBTQ community? And and the answer to that question is not enough. And I will say that it's a work in progress. It's definitely a work in progress. For our department. We recently had our liaison recently retired, and so at this point, one of the things that we have to do is we definitely need to shore up that, especially given the interpretive statement that was issued by our commission. We definitely need to work on that outreach and to increase that outreach. So that is definitely an area that's definitely an area of opportunity for us. And I ask those of the public who are interested to help us and to assist us in working with that community and building relationships and building those necessary relationships within the LGBT community. So now, yes, Gwen.
I just wanted to add that with the Berrien County All-Pact, the Out Center, where Mayor Jo Schnell is the executive director, is very intimately involved, and she is an awesome advocate for the LGBTQ community members, and certainly the Grand Rapids Pride Center here in Grand Rapids also partners with us in various initiatives.
Oh, thank you, Gwen. Thank you. I see, actually, I see one more question. Says, now how do I file for Michigan Indian tuition waiver benefits? I think that would be a question for Melissa.
Sure, McGuetch, thank you for that question. The Michigan Indian Tuition Waiver, as I mentioned earlier, is bound by legislation. It was enacted in 1976. The tuition waiver is provided to eligible Native American students, and it is a waiver of tuition. It is not a scholarship. It is not financial aid, and no money actually exchanges hands. It is a waiver of a student's tuition costs at a public institution in Michigan. And it must be a state funded. So it is the public universities, the 4 years, the community colleges, and the tribal colleges. And so there is an application process. And in order for students to be eligible, they must be certified as 1/4 blood quantum as an enrolled citizen of their tribe. And that tribe must also be a federally recognized tribe, which there are 574 in the United States. The student must live in Michigan for 12 consecutive months, and then must be attending one of those institutions. And that is all handled through an application process. And it basically is an application from the student sent to the tribe. The tribe does their portion, and then it is sent to me for review. And then I notify the school if the student is eligible. And that all can be found on our website. And there is a link under how we can help to the Michigan Indian Tuition Waiver with all of its applicable documents, frequently asked questions, instructions, and other supplemental materials.
All right, Melissa, thank you very much. I have looking down, we got time for maybe 1 or 2 more questions. So I'll ask, this question is more for Gwen and Charles. What's the criteria for getting involved with Outback? Both of you, both of you are our, facilitators for multiple Outback. So what's the criteria for getting involved? I know each region, each particular region operates independently. So they operate independently and locally. So they would all have their own individual requirements or their own individual how they work. But what's the criteria?
So the framework and the design, again, started off in Detroit, was that it's not necessarily a community forum. What they attempt to do is look for community leadership, both on the law enforcement side, but again, community advocate side, and those community leaders who have a voice in that community, either a police department chief or part of the command staff who's involved and has a force and a perspective there, as well as the community leadership, could be clergy, could be executive director of a nonprofit. Those designated and looked at to be community leadership then are featured around the table. If it wasn't mentioned before, the dynamic is to have a law enforcement and community co-chair, and they pretty much hear from community members and leadership, and often poll during the sessions, like who's not at the table, who is it vital that we reach out to. If the focus and topic is regarding education, or maybe an issue within the educational system involving law enforcement and community, then they'll reach out to leadership within the community, either to be featured as part of a presentation or to be at the table to provide substance to the dialogue there. Hope that answered some of the question. Gwen, if you wanted to.
Sure. With the Outbacks on the west side of the state, when I first came into the position, I was involved in planning for community forums for the Berrien County Outback. It used to be called Benton Harbor Outback, but they wanted to expand. And even though they had steering committee meetings that were primarily made up of organizations sitting around the table, also they had some individuals who would come to those meetings. So the meetings are open. And if you're interested, certainly you can reach out to me and I will forward your name to Audrey Lester, who maintains their distribution list in terms of letting people know when there are going to be meetings. As time went on, the concept of having these community forums allowed, or what I found, it allowed other community voices to be involved and engaged. Because sometimes during the day, people could not attend the morning meetings. Each LPAC has different dates of the month and different times when they have their meetings. So to ensure and to expand inclusion of more voices, they were utilizing the community forums in Darien County to do that. And I ended up helping to plant those seeds in other forums, and particularly in Grand Rapids, they have, for example, we've had the viewing of the Netflix 13th, and then had a panel to talk about that. We had another community forum on the use of force. Also, we had in another forum, a representative from MDOC from the Department of Corrections who came and talked about what is the impact of COVID-19, what are they doing in order to help secure the lives of those who are incarcerated. And so it goes from one topic to the other, but by having these community forums in the evenings, generally from 6 to 7:30 or 6 to 8:30 or 8 o'clock rather, more people can participate, because part of the work of the mission of the ALPAC is for this education, where law enforcement is educating community about, even though this may be your perception of these laws and our practices and our policies, this is actually what is happening. And then likewise, from a community perspective, they then can articulate some of the concerns and issues that they may have by, with how those policies are being carried out. So the ALPAC presents this table where both can come together, and let's talk about issues that are of concern for everyone in our community, because police officers are a member of the community as well. And so it has been a very, very useful instrument or tool, again, in bringing people together, increasing literacy, and helping people in these communities to work out some of their problems, issues, and concerns.
Okay, thank you, Gwen. Appreciate the info. And at this time, being respectful for everyone's time, my colleagues, as well as anyone viewing, we're going to wrap up this session. Any questions that were posed that weren't answered, please look for a follow-up. We're going to have a frequently asked questions section on our website, on our MDCR website. I also want to mention that tomorrow we're going to have almost a duplicate session of what you've seen here tonight. Tomorrow at 1 p.m., 1 to 2:30. So if you missed any portion, you can log on tomorrow. Otherwise, eventually these will be posted on our website for your review. I also want to say that August 17th will be, as we alluded to at the onset of the session, we're going to beyond just this initial introduction of our divisions, we're going to feature each division in subsequent sessions. And I believe it's August 17th will be our enforcement division reporting out more in depth about what they do, how to contact us, and what their work looks like. Thank you so much for participating with tonight's event. We thank you for being part of this introductory forum. It's designed to give you a feel for who we are and what it is we do. Please look for our follow-up sessions, even beyond the enforcement unit, which will give you a better understanding of how our divisions function and serve the state. And with that, good night.
Thank you. Good night, everyone.